Welcome to the No Limits Podcast, where limits do not exist, where you can create cash flow, equity, and real freedom with the power of real estate.
3, 4. Now, we will begin.
Welcome to the dojo. This is Todd Toback, and welcome to the No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a very unique strategy, and I promise you, if you do 3 or 4 of these deals every single year, I'm going to add at least another 100K to your bottom line. Now, if you have not shared the show, or you'd like to share this episode, I would sure appreciate it if you just copied that link from wherever you consume the content, copy the link to the show, paste it, and text it to 3 of your friends, and then leave a review for the show. Show has been growing thanks to you, and I really appreciate that. We're going to continue to produce more content and add some other real estate rock stars so that you can make more money. Now, today's show, I'm going to talk about a technique, like I said previously, that's going to make you a minimum of an extra 100K a year, using a technique called the net proceeds agreement. Net proceeds agreement. I'm going to share with you the 2 deals that spurred this technique in our business. So I'm going to tell you about a deal that I did a few years ago, and I'm also going to tell you about a deal that I did a couple of months ago and how we kind of walked into this strategy by accident. So I had this house under contract, found a motivated seller, and this guy was stuck on his price, right? Property was in Lakeside, California. And again, we're trying to negotiate using our techniques from the no limit selling system. We're doing the stealth mismatch. We're getting commitments. We're price conditioning, using all these techniques, and they're working, but he is just stuck on price, right? He is stuck on price. And we are approximately, $20,000 below where we need to sell this on a cash deal. But we have the house good enough that, we knew we could sell it to a retail buyer. And usually in the world of wholesaling, this doesn't work. But we said, you know what? We're going to try to wholesale this anyway. And so we locked it up under contract. We got the commitment and we got the purchase agreement, right? And by the way, if you have not checked out the no limit selling system, this is the system that I use. And I talk about this in the podcast that I've trained thousands of investors here to make more money in less time and shorten the sales cycle. Go to nolimitsalessystem.com, nolimitsalessystem.com. This is the technique that I use to lock up this house and pretty much everything else. So we take the contract and we decide to list this property on the multiple listing service with a broker, okay, to try to get a cash buyer for it. So we put it out there and we also send it out to our cash buyers list. And long story short, we get no offers, right? It is crickets, but it's a good house, right? The house has got a pool and it's meticulously maintained and everything is outdated in the house, but it's pretty clean. The grass is cut. And so I'm like, man, we've got to make some, money here. So long story short, my broker calls me and says, Todd, there's no cash buyers, but I've got one buyer who wants to get a loan and he wants this house, right? And he's willing to buy it from you for a price that you are going to net $25,000. And I'm like, all right, what has to happen? And so we thought about it. We brainstormed it. He's like, okay, well, what if we sign a new purchase contract between this buyer and the original seller? What if we put them together, right, and take you out of the equation and then have the title company just pay you to buy you out of your contract, okay? And the reason why he suggested this is that when you are selling a property to a retail buyer has to get a loan, right, normally. And so FHA or VA or traditional is that they are not going to do a loan where the seller's name is not on title. So that's normally why we're not able to sell to retail buyers. So the reason why he suggested that, he said, look, if we put a new purchase contract between the buyer and the seller, right, well, then the seller, his name is on the contract and the transaction is actually between them, right? And basically the seller just pays me to buy me out of my contract, and that appears on the closing statement. And so I said, okay. And I had all this anxiety because I'm like, what if I put this buyer and seller together and they're going to see exactly how much I'm making? And, there was a little bit of anxiety about losing the deal. And I said, just let's do it, right? Screw it. And so I put them together and I explained the situation. I said, listen, I've got a buyer over here. He's going to buy it from me. You are going to get exactly what I promised you, Mr. Seller, but there's going to be a new contract between you and him, and there's some closing costs and some commissions. I'm going to pay all those, but you're going to get exactly what I promised you. And he looked at me and he said, okay. So my broker prepared the paperwork, sent it over to him, signed the contract. The buyer was really motivated. We sent it over to the escrow company. Long story short, we made $22,000 on a deal that we normally would have thrown in the trash. Okay. Now that deal happened by accident, but I said, wow, what if we could do this in a more structured way, right? Where we could sell to retail buyers, because a retail buyer is going to pay way more than a cash buyer or an investor every single day of the week. And so we name this strategy, we call it the net proceeds agreement. And I'm going to teach you how to do this step by step. Okay. Now, I actually did another deal just like this a few months ago in San Diego, California, a deal on Orange Street. It was a townhome. And again, I'm going to take you through, again, step by step, exactly how we did this, because this time we were armed, right? We wrote it down, we documented it, our team could do it. And by the way, when you're building a business, right, you want to start to do things step by step and get them out of your head and on a paper. So you'll notice sometimes when I list stuff on this podcast that sounds documented, and that's because it is. And when you're training someone on your team or bringing on a new team member, you want to be able to share this in an easy to understand process. So here's how the net proceeds deal goes. And I'm going to put it in a context of the last deal that we did. And that was the townhome/condo on Orange Street in San Diego, California. So this deal in particular was not good enough of a negotiated spread to sell to a cash buyer, okay? The Orange Street property. It was in really, really, really good condition, but there were some tenants in the property and they were cooperative and clean, and they had given notice that they were going to move out in 30 or 60 days. But for whatever reason, the seller was in a rush to sell. They didn't want to take on mortgage payments and wanted to play ball with us. And so we knew up front that this was a deal that we were probably going to do a net proceeds agreement on. So first thing that we did was we used our regular purchase agreement. And in our purchase agreement, we actually have listed that we could list the property on the MLS. And I suggest that you have that in your purchase agreement also. Of course, always talk to your attorney and get his advice. He's the legal guy. For me, I just talked about practical stuff on what we do. So we signed a regular purchase agreement with him with a right to assign and with a right to put on the MLS. But we negotiated a 60-day close. Okay. The next thing that we did, and this is step 2, is that you immediately want to list with a real estate broker, right? Someone who's going to play ball with you. Now, it's really, really important. I've talked about this in the past. When you've got a broker on your team, I like to work with small independent brokers who do not have a boss, okay? Not an agent, a broker. And if you come back to me and say, Todd, I've got a friend who's a real estate agent. Nope, a broker. The reason why is I want someone who is the boss and not someone from one of the big houses, like Remax or Keller Williams, one of the ones where, it's Joe Smith's brokerage, right? Someone who does not have to answer to a big corporate engine. So I want to explain to the broker on what the process is. And on the Orange Street property, I said, Mr. Seller and Mrs. Seller, we are going to have one inspection here. We're going to have everything at once. We're going to have a lot of our buyers here. We're going to have our inspectors. We're going to have contractors, and it's going to be chaos here for approximately 1 hour window. We may need to get in maybe 2 or 3 additional times. I don't think so. We're going to try to get everything done at once. So if you see a little pandemonium this first time around, just expect that, right? Now, we do this on all deals, but specifically on the net proceeds agreement, because if we show up with 20 people at this seller's house and we anchor them this way and we set the expectation, they're going to be like, wow, this guy is on it, right? Where in contrast, if I don't tell them that and 20 people show up, they are going to be like, what the heck is going on? I don't like this deal. Something's fishy is going on. So you want to set the stage, right? You want to prep the seller, you want to condition them. And then when it happens, well, now you've kept your promise and they feel great. I can tell you that when we've anchored the seller property, okay, we bat 1,000. So I would encourage you to do the same. Now, after this on the Orange Street property, what happened was we got a few offers from retail buyers. Now, when you're dealing with a retail buyer, remember that they are going to most likely get a traditional loan. And so you do not want to go into contract with a retail buyer whose financing is going to fall through. So, we had some retail offers, and I told my broker, I said, listen, you want to call each mortgage person that are representing these sellers, right? And find out who has the strongest balance sheet, right? Who's the most motivated, who's got the strongest balance sheet, and who really is motivated to buy this thing and is going to do this type of deal. So our broker who listed the property picked one. And then we went to step 3, and that is recontacting the seller. And I said, Mr. Seller, I got good news. We're going to get you exactly what we promised you. Remember, we told you that we would net you, okay, X, Y, Z. Okay. The difference here, one little change, is that I am using my new buyer to fund this deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the price on this deal, but I'm going to pay real estate commissions, closing costs, all the inspections. I'm going to do all that, all the fees and the transfer taxes. I'm going to cover all that. I'm going to raise the price a little bit, but you're going to net just what I promise you. So what I have to do is I'm going to send you this net proceeds agreement, and it's going to say that you're going to net X, Y, Z, right? Just like we promised you. But it also says there's going to be some real estate and commissions and closing costs that are going to come out of my additional proceeds, which is listed here. And then I tell them the new price. So if I went under contract, so in this deal, I believe the numbers were the net agreement was $380, and I had sold this property for $430. So I said the new agreement's going to say $430, but there's real estate commissions and closing costs. All of that's being covered by me, and the inspections and the stamps and the transfer taxes. I still am going to pay all of that, and you're going to net your $380. But I just got to get this paperwork signed. And so you want to say it with confidence, with authority, right? With a tone, as a matter of fact, right? You do not want to get shaky on this. Now, if you have to, role play in front of the mirror a couple of times, okay? I can tell you the first time I did this back on that other house in the beginning of this episode, it was sloppy and choppy, but we got the deal done. So if you practice, you'll be much better than I was, hopefully. Long story short, seller said, fine, right? They knew exactly what we were doing, right? They knew that we were selling, they knew that we were going to be making $25,000, $30,000 on the property on a normally dead deal. But because we anchored them, because we prepared them every step of the way, we got it done, right? So we took that paperwork, we got it signed. And by the way, you want to keep the line tight here. So when you have that seller sign that new paperwork, either meet with them in person or get a notary out there, right? With a specific time and set it up and make sure it happened. That's exactly what we did. So we got the paperwork done. The buyer and seller closed. We got our money, and we appear as a little line item on the seller's side called equity buyout. And so we made an extra $25,000 or $30,000. And so this technique is all about communication. It's all about having confidence. It's all about willing to take a risk to make some extra money, which sometimes you got to do. Sure, it's uncomfortable, right? But all growth is. I work a lot on this strategy, specifically if you're already doing deals. And I work a lot on the strategy with my private one-on-one clients. If you're already doing deals and you want to make more money, you want to build a team and do more of these deals, you can apply for one-on-one coaching with me. And that's nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/consulting. A word of warning, you do have to be doing deals already, and then also be open to massive growth. Again, that's nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/consulting. So I hope you enjoyed this episode on the net proceeds agreement. I could tell you if you do 3 or 4 of these deals a year, you can add an extra $100K to your bottom line. And if you have not shared the show, please copy the link, paste it, and text it to 3 of your friends and review the show. And I cannot wait to talk to you on the next episode. Talk to you then.